All right, we're going to start this a little early here. Hopefully it works. I've got all my mic and desktop audio stuff set up, so hopefully you guys can hear me in the live chat and out there. If you can't, well, you won't be able to hear what I'm saying and even respond to me. But if you can hear me, let me know. Put in the live chat that the audio is good. We're going to do a quick audio check with the other people in here. Midnight, you want to say something?
Hello.
Can you guys get to hear him?
Yeah,
Let me
all right.
know.
Yeah. Sorry, I had to mute the stream. My
All right.
bad.
So live chat catch up. As soon as you get confirmation, we'll kind of dive right into this. Hey, Reno says so. Hello, hello. What we're going to be talking about this morning. Oh, by the way, before I jump right into this, I guess I better do the news of the morning. As many of you might know, my entire channel pretty much was demonetized yesterday. I found out. Found
I
out
didn't
here
know
today.
that.
Yeah, pretty much.
Ouch.
My audio's maxed, by the way. There, Lou. Audio is.
Yeah.
I'm quiet. Okay, well, I can boost it up a little bit. One sec. Give me a sec, and then I'll. I'm lower than everybody else. Okay, so let me see why. Let me go to my filters. I'll add a boost. I'll add gain. One sec. Okay, I boosted up about 10 dB. Is that better? Give me a check. Test, test, test. Audio.
Hello.
Audio.
Coffee ready?
My coffee is good. I've got a 10 dB gain on my mic now. Does that sound better?
You sound good to me.
How about on the live chat on their end?
Oh, excuse me.
I know there's a time delay. So okay, so Lou says good. All right, so that's a 10 dB gain. Hopefully that should fix it without getting too much background noise. Much better. Okay. Um, is it too loud? I could have gone to a 5 dB gain. All right, well, just tune it down. So, all right. So, anyways, as you guys may found out, most of my videos were demonetized because the YouTube algorithms believes that it's somehow not advertiser friendly. Not a big surprise since I have words like atheist and Christian and controversial words that somehow YouTube finds to be offensive. We've all known this was coming. Anybody who has a channel that
Uh,
talks about any of these topics knows that this ad apocalypse is on its way. Well, it finally hit me. It is a rollout thing. If you have anything to do with atheism or Christianity or anything remotely related to these types of topics, eventually your channel will get hit. I assume by now. So
why? Why? Why don't they actually? No, never mind. I shouldn't give them ideas. Never mind.
yeah, don't make it any worse for them. But anyway, so most of my at least as far as many pages I've seen have been demonetized. Not all my videos, but a huge chunk, including my most popular videos, have been demonetized. Now, here's the thing with that: the problem that you run into is that the only way they're going to actually review it manually is you have at least 1,000 views in the last 7 days. Well, clearly, most of my videos don't get 1,000 views in the last 7 days. They're old videos. I had my very first video that I put up, very first video got demonetized. So, that only had like 250 views. These are never going to get reviewed. Matter of fact, most of them probably never get reviewed because I just don't get that kind of traffic. I don't know how much it's going to impact. It's probably heavily, obviously, quite heavily. Um, so unfortunately, I still have to like maintain my Patreon. I will be doing some other things next month. I'll be adding more things. I started the other channel, so I had to make it up for other reasons. But I mean, I saw this coming. This was not like a huge shock, but but of course, I almost thought I got away with being avoiding it because, of course, most people got hit for it weeks ago. I didn't. Holy Kool-Aid got hit. I think it was genetically modified skeptic got hit. I know for a fact Godless Engineer got hit. I know Jacqueline Galan got hit. I know a lot of people got hit. So you know, I was hoping maybe I could slim through under the radar because my channel's a little bit smaller, but not to be the case. So
I'd
I
like to
will.
point out something. Lou said, "Steve, you're just collateral damage. YouTube demonetizing stuff is about politics and silencing news outlets on YouTube."
Oh, I know that's what it is. Oh, absolutely. It really is. I mean, that's a huge portion of it. And also another portion is they don't have enough ad revenue to go around, so they figure if they knock out the little guy, then this less they have to pay out because there's only so much ads to go around. Now, again, I don't know the difference between limited and no. When they say, "Oh, your video is limited monetization," does that mean that absolutely no ads can run on it? I don't know. Probably not. I'm assuming no. I haven't looked at the metrics yet because I won't know for several days, but I'm assuming that it's going
Steve,
to cut into the ad revenue heavily because I used to get about 3,000 views a day.
I'll be right back.
Okay. So, anyways, though, I want to start that early just to get out of the way. We're going to be talking about Linux here, and it's about 10 o'clock anyway. So, and what we're going to be doing is this is Linux by noobs for noobs because I am a Linux noob, but I'm finding it to be fascinating. I kind of wanted to maybe kind of go over the basics of Linux, the distros, the various environments for excuse me for Linux, and maybe file management programs or Windows management programs. To explain to people who have never been exposed to Linux before what actually is Linux, and kind of how to build upon it. And as you can see in my desktop here, if you're looking at the screen, this is a Linux system that I'm running right now. This is Ubuntu Studio 16.04 that I've kind of customized a little bit. But I've also tested out many different builds over the last couple weeks. I've tested out Debian. I've tested out Fedora. I've tested out OpenSU. What is it? OpenSUSE. I've done Arch Linux and a few other ones. But what I've got a virtual machine running with different builds with different managers running to kind of show you guys the difference. But I've got Charles in here, who's actually a fan of Red Hat Fedora. He's going to kind of guide us along here, hopefully a little bit.
Hello.
Hello. So, real in a nutshell, explain to the other noobs out there what exactly Linux is actually as an operating system.
That's a tough question. Technically, Linux is just the very center of the operating system. What you're seeing on your screen is the desktop, and there's a lot of choices in desktop. So just saying Linux can be very confusing. Linux distros are server-oriented with no screens. They can be more commonly desktop or laptop-oriented. So the desktop is separate from Linux in a very profound way that you don't see in the Windows environment. In Windows, the desktop is tightly integrated in the operating system.
It's for the people that know, we call it a GUI, GUI, a graphical user interface. Basically, it's an overlay to the operating system itself because Linux, when it first kind of was being developed, it was all command line. It was all, you had to type everything in. You still can, obviously. You'll have what's called a terminal. But
yes,
over a period of time, they try to make it more user-friendly where all that's kind of done visually like a Windows desktop environment, right?
Yeah, but you can go too far in the GUI. It's a language. Using the icons and the mouse is a language. Typing on the keyboard is a language. Inherently, the GUI is a smaller vocabulary and a smaller language and less expressive. If everything you want to do can be expressed in the GUI, then the GUI is wonderful. If you push the boundaries, if you move out of the well house, then you'll find the GUI is limiting.
Yeah, and if you look at this particular GUI that I have, I mean, people that have used Windows will see some familiarization between this and a Windows desktop environment. Obviously, the icons, right? The main differences is like on this type of environment, I'm running. This is what show? I don't remember. It's
There's
not
gonna be
going.
background noise. I guess that's coming from Charles.
Yeah, I think so. I forget. I actually, you know what? I don't even remember the environment I'm using. But anyways, it looks more like this. It's not KDE, but it's similar. KDE is down here, but these are very similar type of menus that you'd find in Windows, right? Oh, you can't see this, can you? Okay, so that's not going to work.
Yeah, we can't. I mean, I'm looking at the YouTube stream,
Yeah, it's
and
okay.
I can't
You
really
won't be
see
able to see the
anything.
way I have it set up, but that's okay. I can screen share and show you. So let me screen share real quick. Okay, and I know this is going to look really strange because it's
Is there any way you can make the window bigger, or is that just the way it's set up in OBS?
No, I can make it.
Looks like GNOME to me.
Yeah, I think it's GNOME 3. Yeah, I think it's GNOME 3 actually. Actually, it's not letting me screen share. So, anyways, not a big deal. As long as you can see that I've got the icons on the left-hand side, and that's like I said, the GNOME 3 is going to be one type of Windows environment. We're going to go over some of each of them. But anyways, let's talk about the actual distros. And a distro is basically a distribution. It's basically a package of all the code required to at least get the basic amount of Linux running. Now, you like, what'd you say? You like Red Hat and Fedora, right? Those are your builds?
I use Red Hat. I use Fedora. I don't necessarily like it. It's just I've used it forever, so I'm really comfortable with it. It has some downsides, especially to new people. As you said, it is more advanced, more technical, requires more understanding to use effectively.
A couple people said your mic is pretty loud, by the way. I can't really adjust you individually, but if you can kind of decrease it just a little bit. I don't use Red Hat. Red Hat is actually one of the very few distros that are actually you have to pay for. Most of Linux is free. It's open source. It's open programming. It's free software. But Fedora is a testing ground for Red Hat. So basically, if you're running Fedora, you're running basically an unsupported version of Red Hat. But we're going to talk about the ones I know a little bit better. It says, Bob says, your volume is perfect. I can't hear anything you're saying, so I don't know what that means. If my volume is perfect, but you can't hear me? Bob? What does that mean if my volume is perfect, but you can't hear anything I'm saying?
And that is what?
Can anybody else give me a mic check on the outside then? I mean, everything looks good on this end, so.
You sound good to me. I've turned my mic down a little bit.
So let's wait for the live chat to catch up. While they're doing that, all right. So anyways, like I said, this is the desktop environment for Ubuntu Studio. Ubuntu is the most common one out there you'll find. I have Ubuntu on my laptop as well, not this particular version. Oh, I'm still too low. All right, well, I can boost it up a little bit more. I thought they said I was perfect just a little while ago.
So lost by the chat.
Yeah, I know. I boosted it up, and now now they say I'm too low again. So I don't know. I boosted it up to 15 dB, so we'll go from there. So, anyways, we're going to show you guys what Ubuntu is because that's the most common, right? Let me actually screen share this, and then we can kind of talk about Ubuntu a little bit. Kind of capture this. Okay. All right. So let me add this in here. So this is, I'm going to make this full screen so we can see it. This is Ubuntu. If you're just looking at it through a Google search, through an image search, okay? And Ubuntu is the most common operating system for Linux right now. Most people use this one. However, I don't like Ubuntu normal. I like the Studio much better, and let me kind of show you why. This right here is. I don't want to do that. 1 sec. What you mostly find for Ubuntu. This kind of desktop right here, and if you notice here, the port is on the left-hand side here. Let me see if I can make this find one bigger. Here we go. That's good. See the docking port is on the left-hand side on this particular, and I believe this is this Unity that it uses, Charles? I think Ubuntu uses Unity as a.
I'm not sure about Unity.
Wait, are we talking about are we talking about the same Unity to make games, or is this another Unity?
It's a different Unity.
Okay, I was gonna say.
Yeah, Unity is this is the desktop environment. I'll show you the difference between environments, but I don't like the dock over here, and you can't move it. You can actually run Ubuntu with the GNOME interface, which is this. If you see here, this kind of, we have a smaller, different kind of dock, but you also got the icons mainly here, and you can search for them up here. And I'll show you the difference as I get into the virtual VM box that I'm using to show you different things. But this is the most common is Ubuntu. It's pretty straightforward. I'm not a big fan of it though, only for the fact that I don't like the Unity interface that it comes with. Um, but if you're going to just get something that you want to play with and learn Ubuntu as a noob, completely noob, go with Ubuntu. It's the most easiest to figure out, I think. Would you agree, Charles?
Yeah, I highly recommend Ubuntu to Windows people who want a smooth transition.
And that's a big point. Oh yeah, Timothy says he uses Unity, but that's a big point. People that dive right into Linux, you kind of at least want to be familiar with certain things. And Ubuntu with the Unity Windows environment probably is the easiest overlay to use for somebody who's familiar with Windows. But again, somebody has points out you can use any kind of file manager or Windows environment manager, and I'm going to be showing you the difference in that coming up here. But some of the other more popular ones are this is a popular one called OpenSUS. If you notice, this is uses the same environment. This is called GNOME 2 environment. And then if you look at the build, it's pretty similar to Ubuntu, I think. Again, it's maybe a little bit difficult to hear. Is Bob the only one that can't hear me? Bob says he can't hear me, but can everybody else hear me? Because is it just him?
Well, I can hear you because I'm in here.
Well, yeah, I need the output. But anyways, let me know if anybody else can hear me, and let Bob know that it's just him that he can't hear me. Lou points out Mate DE is GNOME. Yeah, Mate is actually another version of GNOME. I have played with Mate. Mate seems pretty cool, actually. But I just want to show you the different things you can do with Linux here. So this is the OpenSUS, and the other one, the most common, is Debian. Excuse me. Debian looks like this. Again, GNOME 2 environment where you have this kind of panel on the side, and I'll show what these things actually do here in a minute. But if you notice, the builds are pretty similar. So there's not a lot of huge difference I've seen between the distros themselves besides what they come with and what environment you want to use. And you can change your environment. So if you don't like one distro, if it comes with too much stuff, you can try a different distro. I've been using Arch Linux because Arch Linux comes with pretty much nothing. You customize it your entire self. I'm quiet when others are speaking. Yeah, my volume looks like it's actually perfect right now, so it should be fine. I'm still quiet. I have the lowest volume in the room. All right. I can still kick it up more. Actually, you know what? Okay, you know what? Is that better? How's that? No, let's see. I'm going to my sound settings. Recording. There's my mic input. Test. Okay. Let's see here. All input devices.
Ouch.
Okay. How about that? I bet that makes a huge amount of difference. I've kicked it up quite a bit. So let me know in the outside chat if that's working better, because I'm maxing my red line here with just gain. So I don't want to get too much. I'm still a bit quiet. How am I still a bit quiet? My bar is going full red line now.
But Steve, a friend of mine said to tell them that Arch with i3 is the best.
Arch with i3. I've tried i3. i3 is cool. I like Arch, and I'll show you why I like Arch. But I've kicked up my mic all the way. Okay, so I'm very loud. I figured as much. So yeah, I've dropped it down a little bit, but this should be nominal right now. Yeah. I'm not peaking.
He's also a Linux kind of guy. Yeah. So I was trying to invite him on, but he's busy setting up his computer. So I'm like, all right.
All right. Well, anyways, I've pretty well figured out my sweet spot here. So thank you guys for helping me with that. And let's go back to the Debian here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually show you guys the different virtual boxes that I've set up. Let's see. Yeah, I know there's a 40-second delay. Thanks. All right, so let me show you what I'm talking about here, and why I'm doing that. Charles, you want to add anything to what I've just said?
Uh, no, you're doing good. Hang in there.
All right. Oops, let me. All right. So as you can see here, this is what's called a virtual memory box, a VM box they call it. What a VM box allows you to do is set up an entire operating system inside of your existing operating system. What the virtual
Steve,
box?
you like cut out. You got cut out for like 2 seconds.
All right. Well.
Or something.
All right. So what this is called VMbox. Oracle makes one, and there's another one that's called I think it's Virtualware. And what these do, like I said, is that they allow you to test out different operating systems from within your existing operating system. They're very, very handy because they don't screw up your operating system. You don't have to worry about dual booting, which by the way I do. I have Windows 10. But if you want to play around with these builds, I'm going to show you guys how to do it, and I want to show you exactly how you can play around with Linux without having to mess up your system. So let's see here. All right, let's go into this real quick. Yeah, this PC doesn't like a lot of things on the screen. That's true. All right, so what this does, I'm going to set one up for you. Actually, I'm going to set up a new one. So the way you're going to do this is you want to download what's called your ISO. Okay, and ISO is basically an image of the distro. You just go to a file transfer system called FTP, or you can find it off the web. Whatever build you want to use, you're going to get what's called the ISO, and the ISO is the disk that you basically boot off of. The virtual box requires some kind of thing to boot. So to set one up, you would go new. The name operating system. I'm gonna make one for Arch Linux again because that's what I have. So Arch Linux. Oops. Okay. Yeah, this is a very basic system. I mean, I only got 16 megs of RAM. It's not a high-end system, but somebody bought it for me, and it works for what I need it for, and I'm quite happy with it. But 16 megs of RAM is pretty good. I got the 16 megs of RAM specifically for this reason because I knew I was going to be doing testing, and that requires
You mean
more RAM.
gigs or
16 gigs of RAM, sorry. Yeah, 16 gigs. All right, so if people are asking, how do you get a hold of VirtualBox? You just type in VM VirtualBox by Oracle, and you can download it just as you would any other program. If you're using Windows, obviously, you use the exe file. If you're using Linux, you would have to use what's called either a DEB build, which is a package, which we can get into packaging, or there's other ways to install things. Installing things from Linux is not the same from Windows. It is completely different. Matter of fact, it's not even remotely the same. So that is one thing you have to learn, how to install different things. I prefer doing things from the command line. Let me show you real quick what the command line is. What if I can figure out how to do this here? See if I can open up a terminal and then show you guys. So let me open up another window, screen capture. Terminal. Okay, this right here is a terminal window. Let me make this a little bigger for you guys. Oops, gosh, there we go. Okay. Okay, this is like, if you guys have ever been familiar with DOS, right? This is basically a DOS prompt for the most part, right? This throws you into the actual shell itself. Now, when you want to add something, for example, you need to have permission to do that. We call that sudo or super user, which is sudo, sudo. Okay.
Like administrator on Windows.
Yeah, this is your admin. This is your top level. And one neat little trick to do is if you type sudo su, you don't have to type sudo in front of everything anymore. This will actually make it so you're now root. If you notice it says root here, this is my machine, SM2112, yes, Rush. And then root, this is my root directory. And this is my root directory from inside the virtual machine. Actually, no, this is actually my main one. This isn't from the actual. It doesn't make a difference, but this is actually my main operating system. And what sudo allows you to do is do command line functions. And if you want to add things, you can add things through what's called a PPA. And that's how I do everything. I do everything through this command line. And I'll show you how to do that later. But I just want to show you that sudo is what you would do would be sudo apt-get install and then the name of the package. Like that. And then I'll show you eventually how to do that. But that's how you would actually do things through a command line rather than Windows doing it. Yeah, sudo I does the same thing. I just like sudo su. I don't know. Right? So personal preference, I guess. But let's exit out of that. So let me go back to this to show you guys how to add this ISO. Yeah, I know it's bad form to set a root account. Again, we're not doing this for safety or anything like that, right? I mean, this is a personal type account system. I mean, when you're really doing an actual Linux build for like a security or for doing a server, you don't want to set a root account, right? But again, this is just for personal basic information. All right, so we're gonna. You can't see it. You can't see this. Gosh darn it, man. All right, how am I gonna get you guys to see this create virtual desktop thing? Unless I add, maybe if I add another one. Okay. OBS has its issues when it comes to this because Linux doesn't have an OBS that allows you to do screen capture the way it should. It sucks. Okay, so I have to add another window. All right. So when I add new, I get this. Name an operating system. So I'm going to add Arch Linux. Okay. And its type is Linux. It's a version of Linux. Okay. It automatically fills this in, by the way. And then it asks you, how much memory do you want to allocate to your virtual box? I would never go less than 1 meg, or excuse me, 1 gig. 2 is better. 4 is better. But I mean, never go less than 1. Yeah, okay, yeah, you're right, Charles. Yeah, I guess root count is more secure, but when you're doing demoing, it does make it difficult. I got you. But there are some things attached to your root account. You never want to really access the root account. You don't want to give people root. People are like apt-get install Tor. No, I'm not going to show you how you guys use Tor. I don't even know how to use Tor because I never bothered. I have no interest in go surfing the deep web. Never have. Probably never will. There's some creepy shit on there. So, anyways, let's set a memory size of like one gig, and then you create what's called a virtual drive. A virtual drive is a segment that's going to put on your hard drive that's allocated just for virtual system, right? That's what's kind of nice. It isolates it. It sandboxes it from your actual operating system. This is why when you set up the new OS, you can't really damage your main OS. It's sandboxing it. It isolates it, which is really, really nice. So we're going to create the hard drive. We're going to use what's called virtual desktop image, which is pretty well standard. Yeah, I know Tor isn't just for creeping the dark web, but we're going to go dynamically allocated, which means it can change. Actually, we're going to go fixed. Dynamically would mean it'll change as you need it, but it's a little bit slower. Fixed means it's fixed. It doesn't change, but it's... Oops. You know what? You can't... Can you see this? Oh, I got to create another window. Or is it just slow? I might have to create another window. Okay, one sec. I don't like how this works. All right, so here's another window. Like I said, you want to do 8 gig, okay? So we're going to create 8 gig, and then I can delete this window and go to the next one. Okay, so what it's going to end up doing, let me go back, is going to create a system like this. Like right now, I've got Arch Linux. I've got 2 different versions. I got Arch Linux. I got 3 actually. This is Arch Linux saved right here. Is you know what? I don't want to have that. Let me get rid of that. Okay. The reason I use Arch Linux Anywhere is because Arch Linux Anywhere is a graphical user interface to install Arch Linux. Arch Linux, if you don't know anything about Linux, is the hardest operating system to use. It is basically, you are command line everything. You have to start from the bootstrapping kernel. You load everything. It is definitely not for the weak and faint of heart. I tried doing it. It took me 2 hours. I got to the very end step to getting X Windows to start. Failed miserably. Said screw it, was done. So I would have to go back and try it again. But I don't recommend Arch Linux for anybody who's new. But Arch Linux is customizable, and that's why I'm using it here to show you guys how many different ways you can actually do a environment. So let's see. Hopefully this will start up. Let's see if it does. Okay, so it did start up. Let me capture this because it doesn't allow me to screen share. Okay, so it started up and it came up with this. Okay, this is my Arch Linux operating system saved. If you noticed, it's a very easy GUI, graphical user interface, icon driven, right? If I want to go to Opera, which is a nice little browser, if you haven't been familiar with Opera, it's actually a little faster, I think, than the other ones like Chromium and Firefox. Definitely faster than Firefox and Google Chrome. It's actually a very nice browser. It's just very memory intensive, but anyways, if I want to go to my browser, that's how it is. It's a very easy to use, streamlined interface. And like I said, Arch Linux doesn't add any extra stuff. You tell it what you want to add, and if you do it through the anywhere, it has various things you can add at the time. You want to add LibreOffice, which is a form of Microsoft Office. If you want to add Blender, if you want to add Origin Gaming or Steam, I think it has those. Audacity, which is an audio program. You can tell it what to add at the time through Arch Linux anywhere. But if you do it without that, if you do it just with Arch Linux, you have to add every little package manually. So it is a very, very time-consuming, ground-up thing. But for those who really want to build their own system from scratch without having a bunch of extra stuff on their system, Arch Linux is definitely where they go. But anyways, so you can see, even says here, lightweight distribution. So this is one desktop environment. And then up here is where you run everything, right? This is my Windows manager, environment manager, right? Can you see that, Midnight? From the outside?
Well, yeah, I'm looking at the.
Yeah, you'll be on the outside.
Sorry.
All right, so like I said, this is a very simple to use operating system. Charles, have you used Arch Linux with just this basic environmental desktop?
I've seen it, but I don't have a lot of experience with it. It looks like you're using the XFCE desktop, which is my personal favorite.
This is the XFCE. I like it a lot. It's simple. It's streamlined. It's very, very easy to use, right? So that type of environment. So let me show you the other environments real quick. Let me exit out of here. I'm gonna save the state of this. You won't see this, but it's saving the state of the machine, so I can just log back in. Okay. Now, if I want to show you a different type of environment using the same distro, I'm going to start this one up. And then once it starts up, I'll screen share it. This shows you the customizability of Linux here. Oops. Let's start the wrong one. Nope, that's not it. Let me try adding it now. Windows Capture. Probably would have been easier if I hadn't done OBS, but that's okay. Okay, so now this is another type of system that I built, right? Another distro that I've used. Again, this is Arch Linux, same exact distro, but look at the difference in the environment, right? It's a completely different type of environment. The control panel's different. The icons are set up differently. If I want to go, Firefox or something, I just click there. It's a lot of different customization, right? And then the menu is actually down here. This is actually using what's called the, this is actually the GNOME. No, this isn't GNOME. This is Enlightened. I don't know why it says GNOME there. I messed up. I know this one. This is actually using Enlightened as the desktop environment, not GNOME. Have you used Enlightenment before? Charles, at all? Have you used this environment?
Sorry, I got distracted. I didn't hear the question.
This environment is not GNOME. It says GNOME right there. It's not. It shouldn't say GNOME. It's actually Enlightened environment. It's got that dark blue kind of theme going on. A lot different environment than the one I just in. even though it was the exact same distro, right? This is actually Arch Linux using a different environment. Again, it says GNOME, but it's not. This is actually the Enlightened environment. Have you ever used this one? It's kind of cool, actually. It's a nice dark, black, bluish kind of environment.
I don't know it at all.
Okay. So we're gonna move this. Okay. Yeah, the Enlightenment East. Yeah, this is. I think this is the East 17 Enlightenment version. I like this one kind of too. It's very customizable. I like the way the menu looks. Right, it's sleek. It's easy on the eyes. It has a nice contrast. So if you want something that looks cool and very customizable, if you use Arch Linux with the E17 and desktop environment, the Enlightenment desktop environment, then you can add what I'll show you called Conky, and you can add these really nifty things to it to make it look badass, right? So I'll show you that eventually. So, okay, it didn't like me having so many windows open, so let me get rid of some of these. Okay. Which window is that? Okay, so let me
Okay,
get
it's
rid
back.
of, yeah. So let me get, like I said, it didn't like having so many windows open, so that's okay. Now I'm gonna open this one up, and show you another desktop environment. This is actually one of my favorites, and I don't know why, but it's really a cool looking environment. This is using GNOME. And here we go. All right, so this is the actual same distro. The one, I mean, literally the same distro as the other two, right? This is still Arch Linux, but using a different environmental program to show the environment. This one is actually GNOME. GNOME you can recognize because it's got a search bar up here. So if I want to say like Opera, do I have Opera on here? Look, it'll find Opera on there. If I want Firefox, oops. Oh, that's forecast. Look at that. If I want if I want weather, there you go. If I want don't do that. Okay. I can find things that way, which is kind of nice, right? So this is more of a almost like an Android setup, right? For people that have like phones, this setup is very similar to that way, where you have on the Android it right in front of you, all these different things, and then you can actually switch through them this way, right? So these are your pages, and I loaded a bunch of stuff on here, right? I mean, I wanted to show you how. Just look at how much stuff you can actually put on here, and then these are your applications. These are your file managements. If I want to go into file management, right? This is how I would search for that. So my documents, very similar to a Windows Manager program, and then I can search the web by clicking that. So this is using Arch Linux as with GNOME, and I'm telling you, if you guys want something very simple, this is very. I don't use Xmonad. Somebody asked, no, but this is actually a really, really kind of cool way to run an operating system. If you want something right there, boom, you want to go to a program, you don't want a lot of fluff with it, then you just run this, where you have Arch Linux with the GNOME desktop environment. But can you guys see from the outside that I've shown you now 3 different types of, or actually even 4 different types of environments that are all different, but using the same Linux distro. Does that make sense? Midnight, does that make sense? This is the same distro, right? But it's different way the operating environment looks.
Different desktops.
Different desktops. And this is why Arch Linux is cool, because you can customize it with different things. You can try i3, you can try GNOME, you can try KDE, you can try what's called Enlightenment, which this one is awesome. There's literally dozens of different types of Windows environments. And so you can customize them each time and try each one out. Find the one you like. So for a noob, Arch Linux Anywhere, I highly recommend, because Arch Linux Anywhere is a GUI of Arch Linux, where you don't have to do all the manual stuff yourself. You don't have to set up your hard drive. It'll do it all for you. You just basically go yes, 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 no, yes, whatever. It tells you what it recommends, and it'll actually format the hard drive to be set up for Linux. Now, unlike Windows, the way you partition things for Linux is completely different on your hard drive. Do you think we should touch on that, or is that kind of more? That would be more for the people that have used Linux for a while. What do you think, Charles? Should we explain that?
Yeah.
Okay. Linux works with what's called extension, or ext4 basic, which I'm running off of. You have what's called a logical drive, and you have a physical drive. Physical drive is exactly what it sounds like. Your C drive would be a physical drive. A logical drive is a drive set up where the computer just thinks that that drive is a physical drive, but it's not. It's just a drive that is accessing an actual part of that hard drive, or in some cases a directory. Like my Windows operating system right now on my main is actually just a directory. So if I go to that directory, media/Steve, I am now in my Windows drive. Although what it does is it maps it to a directory. Now, the biggest thing on Linux is you have to kind of know about is what's called a swap file. By default, Linux tries to set up a swap file, and you don't have to have one. It depends on what you're doing. But if you have a swap file, you need it to be at least the size of your memory, sometimes a little bit more, but you want to be at least the size of your RAM. And what the swap file does is, if your RAM starts getting full, it can swap that information to your hard drive, so you don't crash or don't have to kill processes. That's advantageous, but the disadvantage is that the hard drive is much slower than your RAM, obviously, right? But if you don't have a lot of memory, then you have to have a swap file, because constantly programs are going to be going in and out of memory. You don't want to fill up that memory because you're going to crash, right? So if you have 2 gigs of RAM, you want to have a 2 gig swap file. If you have 4 gigs of RAM, you want to have a 4 gig swap file. I have 16 gigs. I'm probably never going to fill that up. I don't happen to need a swap file. However, I have a 16 gig swap file only for the reason because that's how it's set up. I have a lot of hard drive space. I don't need to recover it. I don't care. It's better safe than sorry. But if I really wanted to, I could probably get rid of that 16 gig swap file and reallocate that to my file system, where I can actually be able to store files on that. You can't store files on a swap drive. But since hard drive space is so, cheap, and I got so much of it, I don't really mind having that swap file. Because at one time you need it, it's there. But let's see, what else can you add about swap files? Oh yeah, if you're running a server, you definitely need a swap file. I think it's better than not. So if people have asked a lot of people, if you have 16 gigs of RAM, do we need a swap file? The answer is it depends. If you're a home user like myself that doesn't use a lot of programs at once, I don't think you probably do. Well, no, it doesn't have to be the same size as RAM. I'm quickie, but I think that's kind of the rule of thumb. Is if you have
the rule of thumb that I've always used is actually twice the size of the memory. The thought being that if you are doing so much swapping that you need that much, then your system is going to be so slow you need to go out and go get more RAM.
I've heard that too, and I might say that you might be right. I guess I'm going by the bare minimum, right? The bare minimum is you want it to be the size of the RAM, but if you really want it, as a rule of thumb, to be an optimal system, then you want it to be twice the amount of RAM. I heard that as well, and I think that's mainly though for if you have like 2 or 4, right? Because then you definitely want that. And Quickie makes a good point. When you hibernate, it uses the swap file to store the RAM content. It dumps it all into the hard drive when you hibernate. And I don't usually hibernate this system, but I guess if I ever needed to, then I have that swap space to do that with. So that's a good point. But anyways, so I'm going to get out of the Arch Linux. By the way, do you like this setup with GNOME? I think this looks pretty badass, man.
I can't stand GNOME.
I like this version of GNOME. I think this is GNOME 3. GNOME 2, not so much. But this one's pretty cool. All right, so let's exit out this. Let me clear that. Let me get rid of this window. Okay. Well, it didn't like me closing that window again. I don't know what it is, but it keeps crashing. But that's okay. All right. Well, it doesn't like me closing windows out. So, interesting. I don't know why it crashes.
Coffee.
Yeah, I'm drinking coffee too. All right. So check this one out. Let me go back here. I'll just make it go away. So, all right. So this is another kind of build. This is a distro is called Debian. I think people pronounce it different ways. I call it Debian. Is that what you call it?
Yeah, Debian.
Right. Debian. Okay, so
I've
Debian,
heard Debian.
I've heard that too. That's why I think people pronounce it different ways, but I call it Debian, so whatever. So this right here is a different distro altogether. This is completely different than Ubuntu. It's completely different than Arch Linux. It uses a very simple, streamlined interface. Okay. Boom. It's just like the other ones as far as the file managers. Let's see here. There we go. So you just kind of navigate through your file manager, and then to bring up applications, this one is using Mate, which is all done up here. So it's very, very similar for an environment. If you're used to Windows, this one's kind of similar, right? Only it's up here rather than down here. There's another version I'll show you called KDE, which is actually used down here. But this one's a pretty streamlined one. If you want to access things like the control center, boom. It's pretty easy. So I recommend, if you want something really simple, try Debian. It's very simple to use. Heretic asked us some questions here. Heretic, I didn't see him. So what is his questions here? One, what does Linux offer? Good question. Linux offers stability, except for obviously when I run my OBS. But Linux is a lot more stable than Windows. It doesn't crash nearly as much. It also allows you much more control over your operating system than Windows ever could. And it's free, right? I mean, spending $500 for a server system, you can use Linux, and it's free. So if you're running a small business, what's more cost effective? Spending $500 for a Microsoft product that's confusing, or Linux where you can have, it's just as complex to use, I guess, but it's a lot more support.
Well, it's a wonder. It's a wonder businesses don't use Linux to begin with.
They do. A lot of them do.
I mean, a lot of them do, but I've seen a lot of them use Windows. I was like,
yeah, no, but a lot of people are switching to Linux for that very reason. It's like I said, it's free, it's cheap, and all the software is free. For almost every Office program or Windows program you can find, Linux has a version for. And why is it good to use? Well, same reasons. Cost effective. I don't need to spend $100 for Microsoft Office. I can use LibreOffice or OpenOffice. Both of those are very good. I prefer LibreOffice because it's more supportive. I also think it's a little easier to use. But OpenOffice is more like Microsoft Office, and it's free. Why is it better than Windows or Mac? Advantages? Well, again, stability, customization, cost effectiveness. What else do you think there, Charles? Did he lost connection? Disadvantages. There is probably a lot more software for Windows. However, you can actually use some Windows programs in Linux. There are different ways of doing that. Most of the bigger Windows programs are supported through Linux with something called Wine. Wine stands for, if I remember correctly, Wine is not an emulator. Because Wine is not an emulator. What Wine does, it allows it to have access to certain dynamic protocols called DLLs, dynamic link libraries, and API functions, if I remember correctly, in order to get the program to work. So Wine allows certain Windows programs to work in a Linux environment. So disadvantages, it's hard to say. Like I said, Windows obviously has a lot more software out there, but I can't really think of too many disadvantages of Linux over Windows. Can you, Charles?
I was going to say that one of the advantages that I see is that Linux is much more lightweight than Windows and runs really well on low-end processors.
Oh, that's a huge advantage. Yeah, if you have an old system, like an old laptop or old computer, and Windows 10 is just not running very smooth because you don't have the memory or the CPU power, you can get some very, very lightweight distros. Puppy Linux is a very lightweight distro. Arch Linux is a very lightweight distro, and you can really kind of just be able to surf the web and do other basic stuff without having to buy a whole new system. And it's very, very light on memory. It's very, very light on CPU. And so it basically is a way to refurbish old systems. Cheap, free, actually. So go ahead.
Yeah, every time Windows comes out with a new release, all the big Windows shops buy new, better computers so they'll run on it and get rid of their old computers, which all go into the Linux ecosystem.
Right.
Disadvantages, to me, the big disadvantage is support. With Windows, you have a problem. You can ask the nearest 13-year-old kid and get it solved. Doing Linux support can be a little bit trickier.
Yeah, Linux is something you definitely kind of have to learn as you go. Now, there's a lot of resources out there. Don't get me wrong, but it's not as ubiquitous as Windows is. Clearly, I mean, it's more of a, hey, if you really want to learn computers and do this stuff on your own, then I think Linux is definitely the way to go. Now, here I have another system set up. This is Debian using the GNOME interface, right? Same as the Arch Linux I had before. I just don't have any applications installed because it's very, very light. Oh, I did have some. Okay, never mind. I did have some applications, bare minimum. So this is exactly the same type of Windows environment, right? The GNOME environment, but it's on a different distro. Just to show you that, boom, I can do different types of builds in different types of Windows environments. Dang it, where I gotta go back here. Activities, there you go. Like for example, let me show you LibreOffice Writer, which is going to be very similar to Microsoft Office. And so you're talking about productivity. Let's see if I can get this load here. I'm using an old laptop with XP. Works okay. Would it work better with Linux? Yeah, I think so. I like Linux on laptops. It just makes it so much smoother and faster. But I mean, Windows XP wasn't the worst of their operating systems. I mean, if you want to talk about shitty operating systems, Windows Vista or Windows ME, I mean, those were just ridiculous.
Yeah. But I was trying to ask before, is Windows made bloated on purpose, or is it just I don't know?
Yeah, Windows is bloated. There's a lot of stuff that Windows has to they make their money off selling some of this stuff code to stick into Windows by licensing, right? And so they package a lot of stuff together. It's called bloatware. And somebody had pointed out that Windows still has better gaming support. That's true. Windows is much better for gaming. But it's getting there. But real quick, this is my LibreOffice writer, right? So I mean, it's kind of similar to Windows Office. Okay, but yeah, you talked about Windows code. I used to quote unquote crack software, and bypassing the whole put your password in kind of crap, right? And one of the ways to do that, you have what's called soft ice, and you go into the actual memory locations and you start playing around and seeing what memory locations change. You do a lot of comparison, and you go in and you change the assembly language routines. And one thing you find if you really look into Windows, it's spaghetti code. It is the modules they use and the things they use. It looks like they've got slapped together and then kind of said, let's connect this to that. It's really strange.
And this is an allegedly professional company. I mean,
Windows is not known for being streamlined. Let's be realistic here. Windows is not known for that.
Windows success is based on first to market, so they will ship the worst code if they can convince themselves it works, simply to be first.
It's not liking this. Okay, so Synonym, who in the live chat was talking about Synonym, type of memory or Windows program for at all. Okay, hang on though. All right. Yeah, I might crash a few times, but I can come back on. It only takes a second to reload this. All right, so let me show you Synonym, because somebody had mentioned this desktop environment. Yeah, you'd be disappointed in my non-porn file. My system's clean. All right, so this is Debian again, but this is with a different environment. This is called Synonym desktop environment. And see how this one is? This, instead of having it at the top here, it's at the bottom. And it's a very simple, streamlined menu system. Right? Here's my internet. Here's my graphic stuff, educational, accessories. This one's preferred from people that are transitioning from Windows, and obviously, it's because it's very similar to Windows, right? So if you're familiar with Windows, you might want to try the Cinnamon desktop environment with any kind of distro that you want to go with. Now, there's one other one I'll show you real quick. Let me power this one off again. Okay, I guess I should have saved the state, but that's okay. Okay, this is the KDE one. Let me show you the KDE one. KDE is probably the most like Windows out there. Let me move these. Don't need all these windows open. Okay, so let me show you one more. Have you run KDE, Charles?
I used to run CDE back a long time ago, which was the commercial product that KDE was based off of. I didn't like it because I thought CDE was very much a desktop that was easy for system managers to configure, for users to do a set of tasks.
God, I haven't tried CDE.
I'm not sure CDE isn't around anymore, but so I just didn't feel it was, to me, it wasn't a very comfortable development environment.
Okay.
It was a very good office productivity environment.
Well, I'll take your word for it because I've never tried it, but let me show them KDE real quick. This is Debian again, same distro, but it's very similar to the Cinnamon environment. It uses down here, like instead of up here, but then your stuff is listed this way, and you put your applications. They're listed this way, so it's very similar to Windows as well. It all depends on what you like, right? But these are customization things. These are things that you can customize your Linux to be any way you want. You could be almost exactly like Windows if you want. If you don't, you want to have a little bit more style. You can change how your windows look. You can. Okay, this is not like me closing Windows. And by the way, if you hadn't noticed though, what's really nice, my program OBS has crashed when I do this, but my operating system has not. It just kills the process. Which, if that would have happened in Windows, it would have been done for, right? So that's that's a big thing. That if you haven't noticed, I'm losing my feed because OBS is having issues. It's not because of the Linux system. The Linux system didn't crash. All right. So anyway, so let me point that out. That it is OBS. So I think that actually demonstrates that the stability of this is pretty good, because Windows, when you have Windows crashing, what happens, right? It usually crashes the entire freaking Windows. So, all right, so let's go back a little bit.
Sometimes I've had the program crash and the system still work afterwards, and other times it depends. Windows is a hit or miss.
So we've talked about different distros. We talked about Ubuntu, OpenSUSE a little bit, Debian, and of course Arch Linux. So OBS is open broadcasting software. It's just what I'm using to show these windows. It has advantages and disadvantages. You can use XSplit, but XSplit doesn't exist for Linux yet. But OBS is a little buggy still, as you can tell. Oh, what am...
I've used OBS with Twitch to do shared development operations, having a bunch of programmers looking at my desktop with OBS and Twitch.
Yeah, no, I like OBS, but it just still has some bugs with it. Let me see if I can get my window back here. Let me get rid of this. All right. There we go. Now I should be able to get back to my main thing. So anyways, so we went over a couple different distros. if you want to be able to play with it, go ahead and download Arch Linux Anywhere. I think that's the easiest to use, even though Arch Linux is the most difficult. Arch Linux Anywhere is a graphical way of doing it where you don't have to really know that much about it. You just follow the instructions. If you want to build your own from scratch, use Arch Linux, but then you've got to know about mounting points. You've got to know about how to set your drive up. And I wouldn't do it on a system where you have anything else running because you're bound to screw it up. Trust me. So if you have like Windows on it, don't use Arch Linux unless you really know what you're doing, which I don't because I'm new at this. So I did not install Arch Linux in my actual system. I've only been using it with this VM box, which again sandboxes it so you don't have that problem. So we went over different types of environmental things like the Cinnamon, the KDA, the GNOME, and Unity. We didn't go over, but that's what you're going to find for Ubuntu and what's called E17 Enlightenment. I'm not going to get into Windows managers because they're not that important. Windows managers kind of just control how you control your window size and title bar and all that. There's different types of Windows managers, but what do you think we should go into next? Maybe like terminal processes or how to download software?
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about finding and installing software, package managers, and some of the differences that from the Windows experience.
Okay, I'm gonna show them one of the easier ways that I particularly like. As soon as I can get to it, I do have one problem on my system. Whenever I'm trying to go to certain sites, I have to actually go to my terminal like this, and I have to go sudo iptables flush, and because I'm getting a error connection refused on Ubuntu site, anything with org, anything with forms, any FTP, I'm getting refused until I do a flush of my IP tables. I don't know why, but whatever. So I have to flush that first. And let me find something real quick. Okay. So this is how you would do what's called a PPA install. This is how you actually go to repository. The repository is basically a collection of software. Okay, so if you have a collection of software, most of the time there's the canonical ones. A canonical software is basically the repository that's maintained by Linux. For example, Ubuntu will have canonical repositories, but there are also repositories that are not canonical. Google Chrome, for whatever reason, is not on a canonical repository. You actually have to add it in. So this is one way of doing it. Because this is going to be for like noobs, which I am. But this is to show people, if you want to be able to download software, this is a good way to start. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to open a terminal. And the open a terminal, you just go anywhere on your desktop and pop it open. Okay. So can you guys see the terminal? Yep. Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to just copy paste, and what I'm copying and pasting is basically right off where you would go to download Google. So if you type in Google PPA Chrome, it's going to set you up with the Ubuntu updates, and it's going to say setup key and some other things. You basically just copy and paste them in. So we're going to try that here. All right, so I'll type in my password. Okay, so that big old long thing that I just copied and pasted, that adds the public key to the repository. Okay, and again, if you type in Google Chrome, we're going to be trying to download Google Chrome, even though I already have it. You have to just basically cut and paste what you find and type it in the terminal. So the next thing it says, set up the repository. Okay, so we're going to cut and paste this. You don't see it, but if you...
I'm looking at the actual stream, and it doesn't really look like you're doing anything, and it's not frozen.
Oh, it doesn't show you the terminal? Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Okay, so let me actually add this terminal. It shows it in my OBS though, but I guess I can move it.
I don't know, it's weird.
Okay, that's okay. I can add the terminal. Okay. Now can you guys see the terminal?
Yes.
See, it shows it twice for me, but it only shows it once for you. Okay. All right. So let me go over that once again then. When you go to find Google Chrome PPA, it'll take you to Ubuntu sites, and it tells you what to type in. You just cut and paste it in there, okay? And so you're cutting this, pasting this code in, and then you'll actually do what's called an update. So you type sudo apt get update, and I'll do all this updating, right? And by the way, you don't even have to use get on some things. My Ubuntu has been the newer one. You just have to type sudo apt. You don't have to use apt-get anymore, which makes it a little more streamlined. So what it does is this is updating all the packages from the canonical and the newer one that I just added, the newer repository I just added. So basically, you add the key, you set up the repository by just cut and paste. Excuse me, you set up the package by doing an update, which I just did, and then you'll type sudo apt-get install in the name of the package, which in this case would be Google Chrome Stable. And I'll show you real quick. I can't do it because I already have it installed, and it won't do anything. But I'll show you. This update only takes a minute or so. It should be done any second. So wait for this to finish. Okay, did it finish? Yes. Okay. Nope, no, it's still fetching. 1 sec. So we're going to move this over. Okay, there we go. So after that, normally you would type in sudo apt get, and again, I can just type in sudo apt on this particular operating system, but canonical is apt get, so install, and then it's Google Chrome Stable. And see how it tells me Google Chrome Stable is already the newest version. If it didn't already have that, it would actually be adding it right now. And then it sets it up, and you just go into your menu and it actually puts it in there for you. So that's one of the easiest ways to install something through the command line, through the terminal. It's, again, not the same as Windows, right? You basically have to be able to know how to use this terminal. And the terminal tells you all a bunch of other things, too. If I want to know, like, my hard drive. That was weird. I don't know what the heck I did there. Okay. Back again. All right, let's get rid of some of this stuff. All right, so all in all, I don't want to get too deep into this because, again, there's different ways to install packages. I just want to give you an overall flavor of what we can do to add a distro, install a distro through the virtual box to test it out. Pick which kind of environmental system you want, whether you want GNOME, whether you want Enlightened, whether you want Synonym, whether you want Awesome, it's called, or i3. There's a lot of different ones you can do, but I just want to kind of give you a basic overview. So you got some questions on what some of the better distros are and what environment to choose and kind of how to install something from scratch using the PPA method, which I just showed you. Charles says Yum is being replacement for RPM. Yeah. Yum is another way to install things. So is another one called Pacman. If you do an Arch build, an Arch Linux build by scratch, which I tried to doing, the one that took me 2 hours, and I messed up at the very end, and I didn't want to start over again. That uses Pacman, which actually is a way to get apt-get. But Yum is very similar. RPM is another type of build. Actually, I don't know if Yum's so much being replacement for RPM, but RPM and Deb are pretty similar. And somebody just showed me a way to convert RPMs into Deb, which was kind of nice. Because RPM is your package manager, and then Deb is another type of package, right? So if you have RPM as a package, you can actually convert that, I found out, to DEB and then install it through a package manager. I didn't know that, which was kind of cool because I wanted to play Scorched Earth 3D, and I think it was Uriah Christensen and a few other people said, hey, try this RPM to DEB, and it worked. So that was kind of nice. So whatever questions we got. Midnight, you got any questions?
No, sorry, not right now.
All right. Anybody from the live chat? By the way, I didn't check down people we had watching. I didn't expect a lot. 16 people. This is not, obviously for everybody, and I kind of, realize that. I just want to do a basic Linux thing, and then maybe we could do a better one or bigger one next time. going with some more questions because I'm learning this as we go. I'm a total noob at this. And I know that most people that work in Linux consider themselves to be noobs unless they really hardcore. Obviously, people like Nadia would have been really good for this kind of hang up because she actually helped design one of the kernels for Linux. And the kernel is really your brains, right? Your kernel is the actual operating system itself. She helped actually design some of the code for that. So, Charles, you want to add anything real quick?
I was just trying to figure out how this screen sharing thing works here. I was gonna.
All right, let me turn over to you for like 2 minutes, can I?
Show a what my desktop looks like. I don't know whether or not it's going out there.
It's going
but
out. I can see it.
It is.
I'm going to blow it up a little bit, Bill.
So I value my screen. I value my pixels. All of my menus retract and hide.
I'll be back in 1 second here.
On the left, I have my icons. On the top, my menu bars. Very minimalist, very simple. This is a modified, a customized XFCE environment.
Okay, I leave you alone and it gets all quiet. What happened? I had to go use the restroom. You still there?
I am.
Okay.
I don't know if.
Yeah, I just showed off my screen for a few seconds.
Yes,
there
yeah.
Pulled down the menus.
That looked kind of cluttered to me. I don't know. I like a nice clean environment. But I mean, it's again, one thing about Linux is it's so customizable, right? I mean, that's the whole thing of beauty about it is that you can make it any way you want. I mean, I like the way I have my screen now, right? I mean, this is to me looks pretty nice. I got a nice little graphic. You can't see some of the other things I have running, but I've actually got like my CPU monitor. I've got an upload download monitor, and I've got my memory manager monitor. But you can't see it the way I have it right now. But I use Conky. That Conky is also what moves this right here. This 1112, right? That's actually this right here is part of Conky. See that? So I usually have it up here on my desktop, but I've actually moved it down here. But I like the format for this, and then I've got this over here is actually another type of indicator, right? This is called GKRLM. It's called, or excuse me, GKRLM, and GKRLM shows me the core CPU. If I want to overclock it, I can see that my temperature, you know, what my temperature is. 25 degrees Celsius is fine. You know, so I could actually overclock this if I wanted to. Let's see here. 1 second here. 1 second. Okay. So, and by the way, I might be trying some overclocking. I tried it before and it didn't work too well. I didn't step up the voltages as much as I probably should have. I didn't want to I don't want to damage my CPU, right? I know you can damage CPUs in overclocking, and that kind of makes me nervous. But my core temperature is only 25 degrees, which is like 77 degrees Fahrenheit. That's room temperature. So I know I can actually overclock it a little bit. Now I screwed up my thing here. Oh well. But all right. So any questions that we have from the people that are watching this? Do they get a kind of overview? Most people that are watching this actually already know about Linux, so I don't think there's any noobs watching this. But for people that haven't been exposed to Linux, I think this might have been just a good brief introduction. It exposed them to the different types of distros, and there's many more distros out there. So many more distros. There's more distros than you can count. So there's no possible way we can go over all the distros. And there's thousands and thousands and thousands of different ways you can combine the distros with your environment managers. I mean, when we say that Linux is customizable, it's no joke. It's extremely customizable. But let's see if we got any questions before I take this off air, and then I might have a normal hangout afterwards, coming up here at noon, just to talk about this ad apocalypse and stuff like that. So, OS X or X10, yeah, I don't use it, but OX10 is Mac OS, is it not? I haven't tried it yet. I could actually download it and run it through my VM, I think, but I haven't really played with it. But people like Mac OS.
If you peel the layers off deep down underneath, Unix is trying to get out.
So you could run it as a Unix system, basically?
It's Unix down underneath. It's just got a really good desktop GUI on top of it.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I've noticed about a lot of this stuff. When it boils down to it, like all this is all Unix type based stuff, right? I mean, Linux is based upon a Unix type system, is it not? When you boil it down?
Yeah. Yeah, so. Linux is a implementation of Unix.
Somebody pointed out Linux Mint. Yeah, Mint is another good distro. I played with Mint, using Mint with a synonym environment. It's nice. It's nice. It's clean. It's not bloated, so you can try that out. But again, I like the one I'm using right now. This is Ubuntu Studio 16.04. Not Ubuntu, but Ubuntu Studio. Big difference. I like this one a lot. I think it has a nice sharp interface. The things up here for my programs, I can do it from the desktop as well. Oh, you can't see, but you can't see the desktop, can you? Actually, you know what? Maybe I can add that real quick. Hang on. Let me see if I can do a full Windows capture of the desktop environment, so I can show you what I'm talking about. Desktop. It's gonna look really weird, but all right. Nope. See, it doesn't capture it. Really strange. Oh well. Yeah, I can't show you. I haven't figured out how to get OBS to really show what I want to show using Linux, because it doesn't have a browser window. In Windows, OBS has a browser thing where you can just click the browser and it'll show you the entire thing, or it'll show you whatever your desktop is. It's what you see, what you get. OBS and Linux doesn't seem to have that feature for some strange reason. All right, well, I'm bringing this to a close, and if nobody has any questions, I hope you guys at least got something out of it. This was enjoyable. I'm learning Linux as myself, so as I'm learning it, I like to talk about it with you guys.